Raw, real, and just a little dangerous. This is Feral.
For those of y'all who don't know, Iris is an ultra marketer, super connector, and one of my very favorite humans. She's also in a really kick-ass band and wears a lot of leather and vegan leather. But when I was thinking about what I wanted Iris to bring to this very special conversation today, I kept thinking of this one real anthem kind of word. What's the word thing I'm looking for? This anthem that's ringing in my head, this earworm. That's what I'm saying. This repetitive, intrusive thought that I just wanted to bring to the table called "I hate my website." Now what? I hear this all the time. Not only as a strategist, but as a former copywriter, as a fractional CMO, as a podcaster, as someone who asks people to fill in forms where they give me their websites and more. I hear this all the time. I hate my website. Now what? And I feel like underneath that, there's this undercurrent of kind of doom, despair, and give up-itness to be like, well, I guess this is my digital landscape now. I get that because there are web apps that cost $200,000 and then you can get a subscription to Wix, for $9 or whatever it costs. And so I get that, like, there's a huge barrier or no barrier, but for everybody, what do I say? How do I say it? How often do I say it? Where do I say it? So many of those things are coming along. First thing Iris says is don't do Wix. Yes, absolutely. But Iris, what do you see? That's what I see. But when people come to you, when people come to Gas Stove and they're concerned about their digital presence, what does that look like?
I think it's a few things. Some people aren't concerned about their digital presence. They don't realize that they need to change. And for me, if you have been in business 10 years and you have not updated your website, you should probably update your website because you've changed. In 10 years, you've changed, you've evolved. So your content and your website really needs to do that with you. I was in a meeting with a prospective client yesterday, and it was supposed to be an SEO meeting. And I told you about this. It was supposed to be an SEO meeting. And then, we started looking at their website and it like everything was moving on it like really fast. And then, we got to the, gallery piece and it was like squares that were turning. And I looked at him and I was like, man, this is so like it reminds me of 2018. And he said, yeah, that's actually when it was done.
Trends are trends, my darling.
Trends are trends,
the
right?
The 90s are back, and so are the web trends of 2018, kind of.
Well, no, they're not actually. And that was the point, was that, it's like, no, you need to change that. And, I think one of the biggest things is user experience. And when you have an older website, the user experience is not going to be what it needs to be today. And when people come to me, they think they're going to spend like, okay, let me make this correct. The people who aren't in my target market come to me thinking they're going to spend like $500 to $1,000 for a website, and I want to laugh. It's like go to Wix. Even though I tell people not to go to Wix,
don't go to Wix. Go to Squarespace before
go
you
to
go to Wix.
Squarespace. Go to Squarespace. Even go to GoDaddy.
There is something available at every budget, but again, you get what you pay for, and a lot of the time, if you're not paying it in dollars, you're paying it in time. Which again, you got to make what's right for you. But yes, some people think that a website is incredibly cheap. Some people think that a website is prohibitively expensive. Both things can be true, but
Right.
How are you showing up to it versus the money you want to spend, the time you want to spend? Case in point, I had lofty goals, Iris. I had lofty goals of updating AnniePRuggles.com. Spoiler for those of you who are flying to it right now. There's nothing about Feral on my website at all because my website, and I'm the host of it, but it's all over my social. And right now my website's just kind of dormant because it's not really me anymore. So maybe I did really just make this festival for me. But I think the reason why I didn't want to make changes is I got intimidated by what changing my website meant. And in my mind, what changing my website meant to me, even though I know that this is incorrect, but to my mind, what it meant was I have to overhaul everything. I have to rebrand. I have to rewrite 57 hours of copy. I have to completely redo the sitemap. All of my SEO is done. I have to get back on TikTok, right? And then it branches out. It's not even about my website anymore. So using me as a cautionary tale example.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
I literally got written up in CNN as a fabulous one-page website in 2024 and used that as an excuse to not touch my website for all of 2025 to this point. Don't be me, y'all. But Iris, like, I can't be the only one who is letting intimidation or confusion or lack of clarity or just permission clog up this process. What do you see?
All of the above. So I think that, you know, when people think that, okay, let's look at it this way. So you have a client who, or I have a client who, you know, didn't want to update their website, and it wasn't even a money thing. It was a, oh my God, I'm going to have to, you know, Google's going to have to reindex every page, right? Which they are 100%. If you're doing SEO, yes, Google will have to reindex it. But the beautiful thing about it is that if it's been around a long time, then you've built trust. I think that came from your conversation with Dan. Sorry. You built trust and authority with Google. And that goes, you know, that goes a long way. And so things happen quicker. But people are really intimidated by it. And you really shouldn't be intimidated, because I think that, you know, at the end of the day, you've changed. The website experience has changed. It's not just like brochure sites anymore where you go and there's information. There has to be a good user experience, right? Okay, and you know that I look at it like this, right? I always look at a website as, one of my clients had a brick and mortar store. Would people stop and go inside, or would they keep walking?
Yep.
That's what it is now, because now your website is your brick and mortar store.
Yep.
So if you have a bunch of shit on the front page, it's like, oh, buy this, buy this, buy this, get this, that. You know, people are going to be like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. But if you're clear, right, you know, that hero image is that first thing that people get to. If you are clear within 5 to 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds or less, what, you know, the problem that you solve, they're going to want to walk in that door. They're going to want to keep going down and pick you, right? And this is what I try to tell people. So we just revamped one of my clients' sites after literally 8 months of kicking and screaming, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And I was like, this is not like a, you want to, you need to. So I'm going to be patient until you're ready. And then somebody went to his website and actually called him up and said, who's your website company? Because I can't find shit.
Yeah, we don't want
he said
that.
And he said, it's time.
It's time.
It's time.
Beyond time. We don't want to wait until it's past time.
No, you don't. And that's why I try to get to people ahead of time. But at the end of the day, look at your website, right? If it has a smooth flow to it, if it's ADA compliant, that's another thing we need to think of. If you had a brick and mortar, you would have a handicap ramp. People would go to the bathroom and you would have bars for them to hold on to. It's the same thing on your website, right?
I'm so freaking glad that you brought up accessibility. Because in addition to the profitable thing to do, it's also the right thing to do.
100%.
And if you're at this event, you're aware that DE&I and things like it are under big time attack right now. But the I in DEI stands for inclusion. And if you are not taking steps, and I'm not talking about having the plugins that cost gajillions of dollars. If that's the right choice for you and you can afford it, rock on, darlings. But there are some things that you can be doing right now to make any website on any platform more accessible. And if that is not on your agenda, please, 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 the ripple effect of that is bigger than you know. So Iris, talk to me about some common accessibility mistakes that are easy to fix right away.
So things that you can do for accessibility is make sure that your font contrast works, right? So make sure that you don't have like orange on red. God help me. Make sure you don't have like, you know, dark blue on light blue. You know, you want white on red. You want white on black, you know, white on blue. White is a really good contrast color. Black is good for certain colors, but you want to be really, you know, careful with it. But at the end of the day, you have to figure, people come to your site and some people are blind. So, and that's where SEO comes in also, right? Because you have to have the alt text on a picture. So if somebody comes to your website and they're blind and they're using a tool and they hover over a picture on your site and it says picture, they can't get a visual. But if you hover over it and it says, Annie and Iris hanging out on a boat by a beautiful mountain with a blue sky and I don't know, ducks in the air or whatever, right? But they get the visual of that. So they get that. If somebody is coming, and here's another thing, don't have shit moving on your website, not fast, right? Because somebody can come to your site that has epilepsy. And if you have things moving and flashing, you can cause an epileptic fit. And people do not think about that.
Yeah.
Which drives
Exactly,
me
with all
nuts.
the strobing and that, like, animations are fun. I love them. There are ways to have animations that are accessibility friendly. There are
Correct.
awesome ways to turn in things like that off. So if you're using something like WordPress or Squarespace, especially something templated that specifically has the perk.
Or Shopify.
Yes, but has that perk of that interactivity, you can also have a setting that will toggle that off or have it be available to be toggled off. So we talked about text contrast, text size. Y'all,
Oh, yeah. Don't use that
text
teeny font. That's like crazy. People are going
and
like,
also don't use the biggest font either, because if I have to sit there and scroll every time I want to finish a word, that's leaning too far in the opposite direction,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
10 size. Images, you said text, definitely the text,
Mhm.
alt tags on the photos, but also, are you using images with intention? Is there a
Yes.
purpose behind the share?
Well, you should, right? So the reason that I use that as an example is just like kind of, paint a picture, so to say. But, you
Mhm.
know, um, like my hero image is me, which is like another story. I'm getting used to that. But, because it's hard. My
Yeah.
site used to be sterile, right? It was very corporate. And then people were like, no, it needs to be you. And, it took me a while, right? It was like, oh, shit, that's me. And then after a couple of weeks, it was like, oh, shit, that's me. I built that. So it was like a whole different inflection. But really, you want to be intentional. You want to make sure that, again, that the flow and the journey is a really good, user experience. So if you're talking about, I don't know, let's say that you're, I don't know, give me a topic or something. Okay, fine. You're a hairdresser, right? So
Like, give you a topic or something.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of, like how to like paint the picture here. But if you're a salon, your hero image is going to show obviously salon. You really don't want to use video. A lot of people use video. I don't like video. Again, it's the movement thing, but it also kills your load time. And that's another thing you need to be careful about is your load speed time. You have to make sure that when you're building your website that you're using WebP instead of JPEGs and PNGs. Oh my God, Iris, what's that? Well, a PNG and a JPEG is like a regular picture,
Mhm.
and WebP takes the picture, blows it up to like a ginormous amount, and then it shrinks it back down. So you don't lose any of the quality.
Right. It's lossless.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Um, and so I think that, people need to be aware of that, right? One of the things that Google looks at is speed. And it's not on the front end, it's on the back end. So what you do, you go to the site, you click on it and, it loads a certain way. Well, on the back end, it doesn't. It loads differently. And
Yep.
Google looks at that. So you want to make sure, that. So that's one of the things. Another thing, so you don't want video. If you have video, put it on a media page, have links on it that go to YouTube or Vimeo or wherever you have that video housed. So the link is there, but you don't want the actual
So the
video
link is
on the
there,
site.
but you're not dragging your own site traffic down. I freaking love that.
Mhm.
Alt text, I'm going to highlight this amazing quote from Kate, who's been saying some wonderful stuff about accessibility and inclusion in the chat. But Kate says alt text is a great place to incorporate more creativity while clearly expressing what's happening in the photo, right? We don't
Yes.
want to swing way too wide into the super creative, but hell yes, it's a whole other touch point. It's a
Well,
whole
that's
other way to delight and inspire. Thank you, Kate, for that.
yeah. Well, because you want to really paint that picture. So it could be, we're in a boat and, with the mountains and the trees and the blue sky. The more that you describe it, the better the viewer can actually see it in their mind's eye.
Yep.
So that's why I think it's important. What software can you use? You can just click on any image. It doesn't matter. It's no special software now. You can just click and you can change it. You can use Photoshop. I think you can even use Canva.
Well, Canva doesn't do WebP as far as I know, but um, what I did was I went on and I looked for a converter plugin, and then I looked it up on Trustpilot to see if it's actually spam or not. And one of the ones that I found that I liked is webflow.com.
Yes, Webflow is good.
Yeah, webflow.com is a tool that I use a lot for WebP, and it is free up to a limit, and then the limit restores. So if you're not doing a humongous overhaul of WebP, you can probably use the free stuff. Iris, what else? How can we all make our websites better at UX? Not just accessibility, not just inclusion, but also like what makes a website flow in 2025?
I mean, again, it goes back to the user experience. Picture you're walking into a brick and mortar and you walk in and the crap is everywhere, right? It's just not organized. I mean, this is how I really, look at it.
Mhm.
I mean, we have some stores here. I walk in and I walk right out because it's like, oh, good Lord, I don't even know where to
Oh,
look.
yeah. We have
So
the
you wa-
good Ross Dress for Less and the not great Ross Dress for Less, and the
Yes.
only difference is whether or not stuff is actually on a rack or on the floor.
Right, right. And so you want it to flow nicely as far as the journey that you want the user to take. What is the
Mhm.
first thing that you want them to see? What is the first thing about what is the first thing about the problem that you solve that you want them to see?
Oh,
What's the next thing? And so you give them that, impetus to move down and move through. And that's the user experience. A lot of what Allison said, chicken and egg, if your website is more of a reference versus a business driver, I mean, yes, but reference site still drives business because you're still putting information out there and you're painting yourself as a subject matter expert.
and it's still your real estate, right? Especially with Iris and I are going to talk on Implementation Day and beyond about SEO, what's
Mhm.
going on with Google, what's going on with the things of impact of AI, and all of these things are entirely true. However, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen next Tuesday. But as of June 10th, 2025, if you do not have a website that you're glad to show, it is setting your business back just
Yeah.
because you're not claiming that real estate appropriately. And y'all, I a bajillion% am including myself in that because, again, like I said, ain't nothing about feral on anniepruggles.com right now. So use me as a cautionary tale of someone who has not done that, Allison, who has not invested simply because I didn't feel like I needed to. I have a lovely pipeline. I have inbound stuff more than I need. I'm very grateful for that, but it has made me very lazy and complacent when it comes to my website. Don't be me.
And for us, like we're making changes, but we're literally building the plane while we're flying it. Like the site is live and we're making edits live, which sometimes isn't the greatest thing to do. But right now, that's just how we're doing it because there's just so many things that are changing.
Yep.
Algorithms are changing. And that again goes back to SEO. But you want to make sure that your content is up to date. You want to make sure that, okay, the number one thing is that you are talking to your target audience, your target market. That is the number one thing. If you are not speaking to them, don't even have a website because it's not going to do any good. You have to be like, okay, I have Marshalls and TJ Maxx and all that other stuff, right? Yes, but what if there's a Bloomingdale's? You walk into Bloomingdale's, everything is very well. I mean, Macy's is a shit show now, so we can't even use that, right? But Bloomingdale's, you walk in and everything is organized. You know where everything is, and that's what people are looking for now. I'm not saying you have to spend like $100,000 on a website, but I am saying that you want people to know where to look for what they're looking for or where to
Yep.
find what they're looking for.
I love that. I love that idea of your website as a physical space, right? We talked a little bit about brick and mortar, and I believe that it was Kate that said, like, I wish all freaking brick and mortar were accessible. No kidding. We'll work on
It
that.
should be.
Legally, a lot of things should happen.
Although that's a different conversation.
But at the same point, if you were going to walk into a physical space that was your business, if you do have a brick and mortar. What have you done to curate that vibe? What have you done to create that flow, that inclusion, that space, that like to make sure people know that they're welcome and also have instructions on what to do, right? Like don't just bring them in and leave them. Give them what they came for. And similarly, if you don't have a physical space in your business, if you envisioned one, how would you want them to feel? I loved Iris's question. What is the very first thing that you need them to know about the problem you solve? And then what's the next thing? One after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next. And slowly together, that puts a flow, right? So, what are some of the things, Iris, that you feel like a well designed website can make people feel when they arrive?
I think the first thing is welcome. You want them to feel welcome. You want them to feel that you are speaking to them. They don't want to go somewhere that people don't get them. So they want to make sure that you get them. And the further that they, scroll down the site, they want to continue to see that you get them, and they want to see themselves in it. They want to see themselves in what you're solving.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the most important things. And that's where the user experience comes in. And that's where the being compliant comes in. Because again, if you are not ADA compliant, you're leaving 10% of the population out. And then that does two things. You're not including everybody. So you're being non-inclusive. And number two, you're leaving money on the table, because as soon as they go to that site and they don't have a good experience, they're going to go to a site where they do have a good experience. So again, you
Ain't that
want
the truth? If you went to
right?
a bad restaurant, you're not going to go there again. You're going to go find the good restaurant next door.
And again, flashy things, not good. It bothers me, and my eyes are good, but it messes with my head, right? If I go to a site and there's like things that are moving too fast, it's like, whew, we just redid a site for a client who I literally went to their site, like, I think like, I don't know, the day before we met, and I couldn't even stay on their site. I couldn't even scroll down because there was so much crap going on that made me nauseous. It literally made me like motion sick. So, you want to be really careful about stuff like that.
Bells and whistles are bells and whistles. They're cool, but if you're
Yep.
doing your job, they're not necessary, right?
I agree. Yeah, I don't like pop-ups. I mean,
If
if
you
you have to, if there's something that you want to, that you're really trying to sell, you can do a pop-up, but they don't have to, be like that. They can
yeah,
kind of, come up very nicely. Yes, where they are.
yeah,
Yeah, and you're right, Kate. It's an interruption. You're scrolling, and all of a sudden this thing pops up, and you're like, "Get out of my face!"
yeah, that's not what
Um,
we mean by being convenient. That's not
no.
what we mean at all.
That's like a
I
pushy salesperson, right? You
It
go
is.
into a furniture shop and they're like, "Oh, can I help you?" "No." "But can I help you?" "No." "Oh, but can I help you?" Get away from
But in theater, they say, like, if you're paying attention to an actor's shoes and it's not Kinky Boots the musical where shoes are a character, you're not doing that actor's not doing their job, right?
Wow.
If you're not paying attention to the words, if you're not paying attention to the emotions, if you're not paying attention to the scene because you're looking at the actor's shoes,
Right.
then they need to get a new actor. Similarly, if your website is relying on bells, whistles, and animations to keep people on the site, bring them on, maybe, sure. But if your copy's not doing the heavy lift, if your problem solving positioning isn't doing the heavy lift, then I am so glad you are here with us at Feral. You are in 100% the right spot. Go watch the replay with Danny about how to bring spiciness into your copy. Go watch Eden's replay about how to take up space. I want to know in the chat out there, everybody, what is one thing that you commit to changing on your own website this week? And it can be the smallest, most individual thing. For example, I'm going to put something about Feral on my website by the end of the day, right? What's something that you commit to updating on your own website by day's end? I would love to know. I would love to know. I would love to know. What else, Iris? Any final thoughts from you about all this?
No, just think of, when you look at your website, think of the experience that you would want to have if you went to somebody else's website, and then make sure that you're using that same, using the same, I don't want to say tactics, but you're using the same.
We want your own flavor to be distinct. We want your flavor to be distinct, and it also doesn't need to be overpowering because at the end of the day, people got to eat the dang thing.
Exactly. And yes, it should look and feel like you, but it also, at the end of the day, I think that, it also needs to solve that problem. So you have to show how you solve that problem. And then you can talk about you as you go on. But yes, it does need to speak to you, because at the end of the day, that's who people are working with. And people buy people now, they don't buy products.
Ooh, tell me more about.
Well, when you're going to, work with somebody, you're going to look at, yes, the problem that they solve, but you also want to make sure that your values align. You also want to make sure that, you're working with a good person and not a sleazeball. So people buy people.
Iris, I want to thank you for being one of my favorite human beings, but also a champion of both accessibility and people finding their people on the internet. Thank you for being here today, my darling.
Thank you.
I also want to give a shout out to everyone who's making their commitments in the chat. I see you, Kate. I see you, Sarah. I see you, Allison. I see you, Caitlin. I see you, Seth. I see you, Sarah. I see you, everybody. And
thanks, everyone.
Raw, real, and just a little dangerous. This is Feral.